Welcome to Reading the Bible Together and to Genesis chapter 41 and the bedroom of the Pharaoh of Egypt, whose sleep has been plagued by disturbing dreams. The first featured cows coming up out of the Nile. Now, that's not something cows often do. Hippos, I wonder, water buffaloes, or in the manner of dreams, regular old cows, but coming out of an unusual place. Next, arising from the water come 7 more cows, but these ones are ugly and gaunt with a hide covering just a scaffold of bones. To the Pharaoh's horror, these cows eat the other cows. Now, cows aren't supposed to do that. Then Pharaoh woke up, we're told. I'll just bet he did, in a cold sweat too, I'll wager, despite the dry desert air. Well, managing to get back to sleep, it's time for dream number 2. No cannibal cows this time, but cannibal grain. 7 good heads eaten by 7 thin and scorched heads. Then Pharaoh woke up, we're again told, and then redundantly, it had been a dream. And apparently not the kind of dream you forget right away, but the kind that kind of sticks with you and haunts your waking hours every bit as much as it did your sleep. And it wouldn't let him go. So he called in the ancient version of physicians, advisors, and psychologists, all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, we're told. But they were as stumped as he was. And as everyone is standing around looking puzzled, a memory comes to the cupbearer's mind from 2 years before. He relates the story of the dreams he and the baker had and how a young Hebrew had interpreted them and how things turned out just the way the young man had said. "Bring him in," commanded the Pharaoh. So, bathed and shaved, beards were not the in thing in Egypt, nor was body hair of any kind. Esau would have had trouble fitting into the Egyptian throne room. Joseph is brought before the Pharaoh, sparkling clean and freshly clothed. Clothing always has a clue in this Joseph story, by the way, of something big about to happen. We're told specifically here that he's given fresh clothes. And of course, knowing Joseph, we know that he's going to make the best of his opportunity. Pharaoh outlines the problem and says, "I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Now, remember the chapter began with us being told that Joseph had been cooling his heels in the dungeon for a solid 2 years since the original cupbearer and baker incident. And in those 2 years, a change seems to have come over Joseph, who has replaced his natural arrogance with some newfound but hard-won humility. Rather than accept the praise of the Pharaoh, he responds, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Now this is a new Joseph, the fellow with the fancy suit snitching on his brothers, or the guy bragging to Potiphar's wife, swinging his heels in the marketplace, is now the humble Joseph, admitting when something is beyond him and giving credit to God. Aha, you can imagine God thinking, now Joseph is ready to serve me as I intend him to serve. See, it turns out that for God, attitude is every bit as important as ability. Well, another quick point that we get from looking at the original Hebrew language in this retelling, Joseph says to the Pharaoh, God will answer shalom to Pharaoh, which is to say, the answer God gives will give Pharaoh peace of mind and heart. That's the kind of answer that we all want. So we hear the dreams again, as well as the fact that the magicians were at a loss. So Joseph has a chance to rise above those guys, just like Moses and Aaron would do in the coming story in Exodus. But Joseph, again dodging personal glory and giving credit to God, says, God has revealed to Pharaoh what he's about to do. And Joseph explains, there will be 7 years of abundance and 7 years of famine to follow. Everyone will forget the abundance when the famine gets so bad. And the 2 dreams confirm the truth of it and were given to Pharaoh by God. And now the crucial moment. Joseph, who was only asked to interpret the dreams, nonetheless, in true Joseph style, grabs this opportunity and gives his advice. He says, "And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine." That's pretty good off-the-cuff advice. Joseph at least demonstrates the ability to think on his feet. Now, it's important to notice that Joseph does not explicitly put himself forward for the job. Again, remember, this is a new Joseph. The old Joseph would have had a word for the magicians, a bad word for the magicians, and a good word for himself. But now he just tells it like it is. And note the specific nature of this advice. Each year of 7, take a fifth and set it aside. Now, you'd think he was going to say each year of 7, take a seventh. But no, he says take a fifth. You don't just save enough. Save enough for others as well. This will become important later in the story and a good lesson in resource management. Now, of course, we read, "The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and all his officials, so Pharaoh asked them, 'Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the spirit of the gods?'" Gods, it says, rather than God. Monotheism is unknown to this Pharaoh. There was a monotheistic Pharaoh, Akhenaten, father of Tutankhamun, but he was after this time. So all the officials and everyone there, magicians, wise men, and Joseph, are holding their breath. Who would Pharaoh choose? Well, no surprise, he chooses the hero of our story. And then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there's no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace. All my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Now, again, note the similarity in the Joseph progression. First, he was given the authority over all of his brothers by his father. Then he was given the authority of the entire household of Potiphar's home by Potiphar. Then he was given the authority over the entire prison by the chief jailer. Now he's given authority over the entire land by Pharaoh. And now, paralleling the gift of the fancy robe from his father, once again clothing is brought in as a sign of Joseph's progression. And this time he's dressed in finery, even exceeding that which his father provided for him. A signet ring, robes of fine linen, a gold chain of authority, a fancy new car. Well, a new chariot anyway. As Joseph has climbed the ladder, the blessings also increase. And with the blessings, as is the case throughout the Old Testament, a new name is given as well. Remember, Abram was changed to Abraham, Sarai was changed to Sarah, Jacob was changed to Israel. Well, Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphanath-Paneah and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On, or Heliopolis, as the city is also called, to be his wife. So Joseph becomes Zaphanath-Paneah. He gets married to Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, not the same Potiphar as earlier in the story, it's a different Potiphar, to be his wife. Now, if you're wondering why the covenant of Abraham is not carried through Joseph's line, when Joseph is a man of such humility, ability, and authority now, well, there's your answer. You see, Joseph has been given an Egyptian wife, the daughter of a pagan priest. In fact, the name Asenath is a pagan name, meaning belonging to that particular god. Now, Joseph's children will, as a result, be half Egyptian. The covenant will not go through this half-pagan Egyptian line, but it will continue, thanks to Joseph. And the story will tell us how. So, there's Joseph, a mere 30 years of age when placed in authority. Perhaps this reminds you of someone else who was 30 when his ministry began. And Joseph collected the grain, and we read that, of course, the land was blessed because it's under Joseph's administration. And it was like the sand of the sea, another familiar phrase. Remember, Abraham was told that his offspring would be like the sand of the sea. Well, now the grain of of Egypt is like the sand of the sea. Another sign of the blessing of God. This isn't just a random good harvest. This is a blessing of God. In fact, such a blessing that we're told not even the careful Joseph could manage the records any longer. It was beyond counting. And Joseph was not only blessed with grain, he was blessed with sons, with 2 sons by his Egyptian wife, Asenath. But curiously, despite the fact that he now has an Egyptian name and is married to an Egyptian wife and is second in command of all of Egypt, he gives his boys Hebrew names, Manasseh and Ephraim, which mean respectively forget and twice fruitful. And what is it that Joseph is determined to forget? 2 things. First of all, we're told he's trying to forget his suffering and significantly his family back home. Trying to forget his suffering that he endured on behalf of his brothers and being thrown in jail and all the rest of it. And we are told he's trying to forget his family back home. Now, that's another reason that he's maybe not the guy to be entrusted with the covenant. Because of all things to forget, you're not supposed to forget the family back home. Not only is Joseph trying to forget, he names his son, "Please help me forget the family back home." Well, when the famine hit, as the story continues, there was food to buy in Egypt. And remember the part about storing a fifth of the harvest for 7 years? Well, now we learn why. We're told all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. All the world came to Egypt. Egypt became the breadbasket of the entire Mediterranean basin. And in the next chapter, part of that long line of famine-struck foreigners coming to Egypt to buy grain were people that we know. But that's for next time at Genesis chapter 41, as we continue to read the Bible together. Actually, that'll be Genesis chapter 42. Perhaps I should be named Manasseh, the guy who forgets. See you then.